The stories of Jesus after the resurrection have a tone of irony. There's Mary in the garden. It's so horrible that Jesus was crucified. Now his body's been stolen. She can't even do him the honor of preparing it for its sleep in the tomb. Jesus asks why she's weeping, and she explains. She looks at him and thinks, gardener, maybe he's the one who took the body of Jesus away. And it's not until he says her name that she finally recognizes him. Two disciples head for Emmaus. Jesus falls in step with them. They have a long conversation talking about the crucifixion and the strange stories they'd heard of the empty tomb. How much time did they spend with him? An hour? 2? It wasn't until Jesus broke bread and blessed it that they realized they'd told Jesus himself about his own crucifixion. They rush back to the other disciples to gasp out the story, but Jesus is suddenly there. Now, it's Thomas's bad luck not to be there with the other disciples when they see Jesus. They'd all been hiding out of fear. Well, maybe Thomas had been bolder, so perhaps he'd been out about in the city. But he's also bolder in his doubts and becomes the first mental resident of Missouri, the show-me state. He wanted to actually touch the wounds, but seeing them ended up being enough. And then things have settled down a little. The disciples weren't residents of Jerusalem. They'd probably all mostly headed home, though they apparently made plans for getting back together again before they parted. We know that because they were together at Pentecost. Now, to me, it makes sense that they'd go back to their normal lives for a while. Strange, terrible, then amazing things had happened. Touching base with the familiar parts of their life before Jesus may have felt necessary. No doubt it also confirmed a reality that they had changed and that the old life didn't fit too well anymore. Simon Peter has gone back to the Sea of Galilee. His fishing partners, James and John, the sons of Zebedee, are with him, along with Thomas, Nathanael, and at least 2 others. One of this group was a somewhat mysterious figure, sometimes described as the disciple whom Jesus loved. No one knows for sure who this was. For myself, I've sometimes figured it was either a relative of Jesus or maybe a childhood friend, someone the other disciples recognized as having had a close relationship prior to Jesus' ministry. Once they're home, Peter is restless. He's a man of action, and right now he's not sure what he's supposed to be doing. But he's a fisherman, and tradition says he was the best fisherman on the Sea of Galilee, or sometimes called, I think, the Sea of Tiberias. Anyway, he's at home. He's got his boat standing there. His nets are standing idle. So he says, I'm going fishing. And the others also seem to feel that action is better than inaction, and they say they'll go along. We get a few details. Fishermen often removed their clothes for their work, and we know that Peter at least had done this much. Perhaps they'd fished all night from the left side of the boat. It's not clear. If they did, it makes me wonder whether Peter was left-handed. As a lead fisherman, he might have preferred the side where his dominant hand was most useful. But it could simply be that they were currently fishing from the left side when morning came. They'd fished all night, no luck. They're not too far from shore, maybe 100 yards. It's close enough for someone taking a walk to call out to them and comment on how well their fishing had gone. It wouldn't have been unusual. Many of us passing someone fishing would ask, "What's the catch?" It also didn't take supernatural ability to question the night's luck. A good catch would be visible. The boat would also ride a little lower. The man on shore suggests that they throw their nets out on the right side of the boat. Again, there's no particular suggestion of supernatural insight. A man on shore might have caught sight of a shoal of fish heading their way that they hadn't noticed or seen from their angle. The one described as the disciple Jesus loved called out to Peter that it was the Lord. Was it the number of fish they now caught that clued in the one disciple? Or was it that the catch was simply a powerful reminder of how Jesus had said they'd be catching people, and so this disciple looked more closely at the stranger? had that disciple stayed on shore, so he saw Jesus more clearly and was now shouting in excitement across the water. Any number of possibilities could fit into the details that John gives us. Peter, as impulsive as ever, grabs his clothing, dresses, and jumps into the water to swim to shore. We can sympathize. If the beloved disciple is right, Jesus is there. Jesus whom he denied, Jesus who died, Jesus who was incredibly alive again. So he dives in, washing off the sweat and the grime of the night's toil, shocking ancient muscles that hadn't fished for a while, pushing his tired body, coming up from the water with wet fabric slapping against his skin, dripping, and perhaps feeling a bit ridiculous. But you have to admire his impetuous joy to get to Jesus' side. However, I also admire the other disciples, and I admire them more and more as the years go by. They must have felt the same need that Peter experienced, the same desire to get to the side of Jesus just as fast as they could. But they didn't abandon the boat. After all, it could be a hazard on the water. And they also didn't abandon the catch that Jesus had helped them get. Instead, the disciples who were left behind by Peter all worked to get everyone and everything on shore so that boat, fish, and disciples could all be safe and together with Jesus. And that's sometimes the choice we have to make in life. We don't get to choose the splendid or grand gesture all the time, or shouldn't. We sometimes need to do the hard work, denying what we personally want, keeping our eyes on the big picture, caring about other people and other issues that instead of ourselves. But back to the beach. A little charcoal fire was burning there. Jesus told them to bring the fish that they had caught so they could be cooked for breakfast. And then there's this wonderfully ambiguous statement from John. They didn't dare ask him who he was because they knew who he was. Sounds like a part of themselves wanted to ask, wanted to confirm the truth of what they were witnessing. It recalls for me the cry of the Father who said to Jesus, "I believe, help my unbelief." The fact of Jesus being with them again was still so new, it was so amazing. Their brains still lived in the land of things that were too good to be true. Their adult, doubtful selves wanted to ask, but the trembling, joyful faith inside won out. So they went and they ate and they were filled. And then, of course, Jesus asked that threefold question of Peter. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my lambs. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Peter gets a direction and a purpose for his impetuous enthusiasm. From now on, he will fish for people, and they will also eat, and they will be filled. The ironies in life often become apparent only from the perspective of the future. And some of the irony edges towards tragedy. Some of it nibbles on comedy. But when it comes to Jesus and the resurrection, it's about other things as well. It's about getting something wonderful that we didn't deserve. It's about getting ridiculously enormous results when you didn't expect them. It's also about faithfully keeping at it, even when you don't get the results that you hoped for. It's about faithfully keeping at it, even when our personal inclinations may not bend in that direction. It's about loving Jesus, and it's about feeding his sheep. It's about being passionate and enthusiastic and using that for Jesus and other people. It's about tending the boat and bringing in the catch. And it's about having a fish fry on the beach and laughing, because the best possible things in life are possible after all. Amen.